Scheherazade, 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 Scheherazade. Ironically, today work has taken me to a recording studio, so behind me is an expensive recording studio, and here I am inside of a car recording some footage because I'm an amateur. One day, maybe one day. If you've been following me on Instagram, you'll know that I've been reading the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, which is a very long title, and there you go, you can see the cover. It's a movie cover, so you probably also know that it is also now a movie. Everybody loves this book. It's been a massive worldwide success. It was given to me as a gift, and I want to say nice things about it. Let's say nice things about it. It is a charming book. It is a bit sort of book clubbish. I mean, it's gentle, and it talks about World War II, and occasionally it needs to say savage things, but it's still gentle about them. There's only one or two moments in the book where it actually approaches saying something a little bit hard. But then that's not really the point in these kinds of books, is it? These kinds of books are just, you take them on a holiday and then you claim you've read a book at the end of it. And for all of that, for all of my cynicism and all of my need to read things like Martin Amis, where people are horrible but it's beautifully written, you kind of need books like this in your life because they make things sort of okay, right? Nice bit of escapism. And for that, I can never ever be annoyed at a book like this. In fact, there are many books that I've liked like this over the years. Anyway, let's get into the reading, shall we? We're going to do the reading of the Afterword by Annie Barrows, who is the niece of Mary Ann Schaffer, who was the lady who wrote this. The most remarkable thing about this book is it's written in a very middle-class English voice, and yet both of the writers are American. So fair play. Every time I try to write in a different voice, my editor tells me to wind my neck in, basically. Shall we get on with it? I grew up in a family of storytellers. In my family, there is no such thing as a yes or no question, a simple answer, or a bold fact. You can't even ask someone to pass the butter without incurring a story, and major holidays always end with the women gathered around the table, weeping with laughter, while our husbands sit in the next room holding their heads. Obviously, with so much practice, my family is rich in fine storytellers, but my Aunt Mary Ann Schaffer was the jewel in our crown. What was it about Mary Ann turning a tale? She was one of the wittiest people I have ever met, but wit wasn't the essence of her gift. Her language was lustrous, her timing was exquisite, her delivery was a thing of beauty and a joy forever, but none of these reaches to the centre of her charm. That, it seems to me, was her willingness to be delighted by people, their phrases, their frailties, and their fleeting moments of grandeur. Together with her delight was the impulse to share it. She told stories so that the rest of us listening could be delighted with her, and time and again she succeeded. To tell is one thing, to commit to paper is another. For as long as I can remember, Mary Ann was always working on something, but she never completed a book to her own satisfaction. At least not until she embarked upon the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. The story of that embarkation began in 1980, when Mary Ann was in the throes of a fascination with Kathleen Scott, wife of the polar explorer Robert Falcon Scott. In order to write her biography, Mary Ann travelled to Cambridge, England, where her subject's papers were archived. But when she reached her destination, Mary Ann discovered that the archive consisted primarily of aged bits of notes, illegibly scrawled in pencil. Thoroughly disgusted, Mary Ann threw the project over, but she was not yet ready to return home. Instead, for reasons that will always be obscure, she decided to visit the island of Guernsey, far in the nethermost regions of the English Channel. Mary Ann flew there, and of course, drama followed. As her plane landed, what she described as a terrible fog arose from the sea and enshrouded the island in gloom. The ferry service came to a halt, the airplanes were grounded. With the dismal clank of a drawbridge pulling to, the last taxi rattled off, leaving her in the Guernsey airport, immured, isolated and chilled to the bone. Are you getting the sense of how Mary Ann told a story? There, as the hours ticked by, she hunkered in the feeble heat of the hand dryer in the men's restroom. The hand dryer in the women's restroom is broken, struggling to sustain the flickering flame of life. The flickering flame of life required not only bodily nourishment, candy from vending machines, but spiritual aliment, that is, books. Mary Ann could no more endure a day without reading than she could grow feathers, so she helped herself to the offerings of the Guernsey Airport bookstore. In 1980, this bookstore was evidently a major outlet for writings on the occupation of the island by the Germans during World War II. Thus, when the fog lifted, Mary Ann left the island, having seen nothing that could be considered a sight, with an armload of books and an abiding interest in Guernsey's wartime experiences. Some 20 years passed before Mary Ann, goaded by her writing group, began the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. As the members of the Literary Society found during their ordeal, companionship can help us surmount nearly any barrier, imposed, self-imposed, or imagined. Likewise, Mary Ann's writing group, by cajoling, critiquing, admiring and demanding, sustained her throughout the obstacle course of creation and across the finish line to her first completed manuscript. All I wanted, Mary Ann once said, was to write a book that someone would like enough to publish. She got what she wanted, and more, for publishers from around the world flocked to buy her book. It was a triumph, of course, for her, but for the rest of us long-time Mary Ann listeners as well. Finally, we had proof of what we had known all along. Our very own personal Scheherazade could beguile the world. We swelled with pride. But then, just as if we were in some horrible, retributive folk tale, the triumph turned, because Mary Ann's health began to fail. When, shortly thereafter, the book's editor requested some changes that required substantial rewriting, Mary Ann knew that she did not have the stamina to undertake the work, and she asked me if I would do it, on the grounds that I was the other writer in the family. Of course I said yes. Writers are rarely the solution to anyone's problems, and this was a unique occasion to help someone I loved. But to myself I whispered that it was impossible. Impossible for me to take on my aunt's voice, her characters, the rhythm of her plot. However, there was no help for it. I had to begin, and once I began, I discovered something. It was easy. It was easy because I had grown up on Mary Ann's tales. They didn't just come with the butter, they were the butter. They were nourishment. All those years and years with her stories were the wallpaper of my life, when just passing through the dining room would garner me an odd expression or an obscure fact. Mary Ann's idea of narrative was becoming mine. In the same way that people acquire accents and politics from their surroundings, I acquired stories. Working on the book then was like sitting down with Mary Ann. Her characters were people I knew, sometimes literally, and their most irrational actions had a certain familiar logic to me. When Mary Ann passed away in early 2008, the book was a comfort because it held her within it. The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society is a testament to Mary Ann's talent, to be sure, but in the truest way is also the embodiment of her generosity. In it she offers for our enjoyment a catalogue of her delights, the oddities that enchanted her, the expressions that entertained her, and above all, the books that she adored. I think that Mary Ann knew before she died that her book was going to be well received, but no one could ever be entirely prepared for the avalanche of acclaim that greeted its publication. As first the booksellers, then the reviewers, and finally actual readers got their hands on the book, we noticed that their praise often took the same form. The book was quirky, unlike anything else, charming, vivid, witty. In other words, it was like Mary Ann herself. Suddenly, the rest of the world had a seat at the table where I had been feasting my whole life, and as with any family party, they clustered around Mary Ann, weeping with laughter or sorrow as her stories billowed forth. The only flaw in the feast is that it ends. If I could have anything I wanted, I would choose story without end, and it seems that I have lots of company in that. I've received many, many letters from readers all over the world bemoaning the fact that the book comes to an end. I want it to go on forever, they say. I want to go to Guernsey and join a book club. I want to be a member of the society. The good news is that as long as we don't get too caught up in the space-time continuum, the book does still go on. Every time a reader talks about it with another reader, the membership of the Guernsey Literary Potato Peel Pie Society increases each time the book is read and enjoyed. The wonderful thing about books, and the thing that made them such a refuge for the islanders during the occupation, is that they take us out of our time and place and understanding and transport us not just into the world of the story, but into the world of our fellow readers who have stories of their own. In the months since the book was published, I have heard from readers who were reminded of their own wartime experiences. One Guernsey native told me of his evacuation to England, along with hundreds of other children, the week before the Germans invaded. The most thrilling moment, he said, was his first glimpse of a black cow. He hadn't known cows came in black. Another woman, a child in Germany during the war, told of bringing food to the French soldier hiding in the attic. She was the only member of the family small enough to squeeze through the trapdoor. It's not all war stories either. I've heard from people who want to know if Mary Lamb really stabbed her mother with a carving knife. Yes. And people who want to make potato peel pie. I would advise against this. And people who want to read another book written in letters. Daddy Longlegs. This profusion of questions, exclamations and tales is the new version of the Society. Its members are spread all over the world, but they are joined by their love of books, of talking about books, and their fellow readers. We are transformed magically into the Literary Society each time we pass a book along, each time we ask a question about it, each time we say, if you liked that, I bet you'd like this. Whenever we are willing to be delighted and share our delight, as Mary Ann did, we are part of the ongoing story of the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society.